eating more than necessary or collecting more funds than required. 2. Over endeavoring for mundane things that are very difficult to obtain. 3. Talking unnecessarily about mundane subject matters. 4. Practicing the scriptural rules and regulations only for the sake of following them and not for the sake of spiritual advancement, or rejecting the rules and regulation of the scriptures and working independently or whimsically. 5. Associating with worldly-minded persons who are not interested in Krishna consciousness. And 6. Being greedy for mundane achievements. And our current verse, text number 3. Usaha nishchaya dhairya tattat karma pravartana sangatyagat vritteha shadbir bhaktiha prasiddhati. Usahan nishchaya dhairya tattat karma pravartana sangatyagat vritteha Shadbir Bhaktiha Prasiddhati. Translation Jagadguru Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. There are 6 principles favorable to the execution of pure devotional service. 1. Being enthusiastic. 2. Endeavoring with confidence. 3. Being patient. And 4. Acting according to the regulative principles such as Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, hearing, chanting, and remembering Krishna. 5. Abandoning the association of non-devotees. And 6. Following in the footsteps of the previous acharyas. These 6 principles undoubtedly assure the complete success of pure devotional service. So, last week I think we already discussed actually being enthusiastic, and we also discussed about endeavoring with confidence. And I think this week I think we are going to discuss about being patient. I think when we finish, I think we didn't get much time to actually focus on the point of being confident or actually nishchaya. So that's where we finish. I think, do you remember which paragraph we stopped? I think, yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Prabhuji, I think we saw that these activities must be executed with
patience, right?
That's the last paragraph we read, yeah.
So did we read that, Mataji? Yes, I think we did.
Yeah, we read that paragraph. We read that paragraph, but I'm not sure if we focused enough on it.
Yeah, I think we should maybe start reading again, and then we discuss, what is mean by being patient, and we also discuss the confidence as well. Yeah.
Yes.
Do you want me to share the screen, Mataji?
No, I have the screen open. You can read directly if you want to.
Right. I think while you're reading, I will share it, and because not maybe everyone should have the access to the book.
Yes.
So, and then we'll unshare it. Okay. Yeah. You can read when you're ready, Mataji.
Yes. These activities must be executed with patience. One should not be impatient in Krishna consciousness. Indeed, this Krishna consciousness movement was started single-handedly, and in the beginning there was no response. But because we continue to execute our devotional activities with patience, people gradually began to understand the importance of this movement, and now they are eagerly participating. One should not be impatient in discharging devotional service, but should take instructions from the spiritual master and execute them with patience, depending on the mercy of Guru and Krishna. The successful execution of Krishna conscious activities requires both patience and confidence. A newly married girl naturally expects offspring from her husband, but she cannot expect to have them immediately after marriage. Of course, as soon as she is married, she can attempt to get a child, but must surrender to her husband. But she must surrender to her husband, confident that her child will develop and be born in due time. Similarly, in devotional service, surrender means that one has to become confident. The devotee thinks, Avashya Rakshave Krishna. Krishna will surely protect me and give me help for the successful execution of devotional service.
This
This is
called
called confidence.
confidence. Okay, thank you, Mataji. So the patience is very, very important, to execute the devotional services, and if one want to actually get to the stage of being a pure devotee, as Rupa Goswami has actually said in a translation that these 6 activities are very, very important for the execution of pure devotional service. So one who is impatient, I think it's very difficult for such person to execute, any kind of services, even their material. So those who possess the quality of dhairya is called dhira or sober. Due to lack of this quality, they can become restless, and those who are impatient cannot do any work. By the quality of dhairya, practitioner control first himself, and then he can control the whole world. So let's understand first what is the meaning of actually dhairya. So the material meaning we know, actually it's a patience. One has to become a patient, and it is a quality. A lot of people accept that is one important quality. Even in the material world, if you go for actually, any kind of job or any kind of profession, normally this quality is very well received. If somebody is very patient, because even in a material sphere, if you're actually aiming for some material aim, becoming, maybe director of some company, or go to the manager position or whatever, still I think unless that person is very patient, it is very hard for him to actually stay focused on that path, because no one can expect the immediate success. If you actually just join the job, you cannot expect your boss to promote you straight away, right? So first you have to prove yourself. You have to put in the hard work. You show your qualities, your skill and experience. Then actually you can able to actually influence them. And when there is opportunity available, then there is a good chance for you to actually being promoted, right? So being patient is very, very important, and especially in devotional line, as Srila Prabhupada actually gave the example there that ISKCON was actually started single-handedly by Srila Prabhupada, right? When Srila Prabhupada went to America in such an advanced age, and it's not like that because he was pure devotee, everything actually was arranged very easily for him. Yeah, he has to actually go through 2 heart attacks, on his way to America. And even when he was there, he used to actually stand in a park and actually used to chant, for hours, for many days, all alone. He was singing the glories of Krishna, and no one came. So you can actually see, even the pure devotee, it's not actually easy. They have to actually exercise the patience. So when actually you try to actually achieve the mercy of Krishna, you cannot put conditions, right? Because you cannot say, okay, now I'm started chanting 16 rounds, I'm actually following the regulative principles, and why actually I'm not actually developing a natural love for Krishna straight away, or why my mind is still wandering here and there, why I'm not actually developing a distaste for material things. So it could be as a result of a lot of other factors, because it takes time for actually all the anarthas or all the bad habits that we have accumulated in our heart, that could be in this lifetime, or it may be from previous lifetimes, So when we actually begin on this path, when you start chanting the Krishna's holy names, so, and the whole actually process of actually Krishna consciousness, actually, waking up early in the morning, doing the deity worship, cooking for Krishna, doing various services for Krishna, chanting, studying the scriptures. So all these activities are actually quite purifying in themselves, So actually the process began, but one has to actually stay patient, so that all these actually anarthas we can actually slowly started to disappear, and that is what is called anartha nivrutti, right? So we want to actually get rid of all the bad habits out of our from our heart, So even Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says in his Shishtashtakam, Cheto Darpana Marjanam. So where your heart is actually compared to like a mirror, and that actually dust of many lifetime sin is actually accumulated on our heart, we have to clean it with chanting and all these actually services, So all these things takes time. So one has to become very, very patient. So even just like Srila Prabhupada, it took quite a while to actually, start that actually International Society for Krishna Consciousness. And then actually it takes about 10 years to actually establish 108 temples across the world, right? So even Srila Prabhupada was a pure devotee of Lord. It still, he has to be, he has to actually remain patient. So what to speak about ourselves, as actually very ordinary people who are just want to become a devotee, it can take many, many lifetimes. So you cannot put conditions on Krishna that, he can become merciful today, or he can be merciful after hundreds of years, or maybe in the next lifetime. But still, we should have a firm confidence, that's what called nishchay, that actually we remain fixed in our devotional service, remain fixed on his lotus feet, right? And that is actually is called here as a nishchay or real confidence, So doesn't matter, as even in Shishtashtakam, last verse it says that even if Krishna handles you very roughly, or he does not actually appear in front of you, still doesn't matter. You should still love him with all your heart, right? So it's an unconditional love. So even it takes like millions of lifetimes, still, if one is stay focused in his devotional service, then because of this quality of being patient, finally he will actually achieve that prime goal of actually achieving true love for Krishna. So this is actually called actually the dhairya and confidence as well in this process. So Srila Prabhupada has given the actually many definitions actually in his lectures. Actually, I came across in a reading where he said, actually he defined dhairya as one who understands actually what is soul, So, and one who understands what is the relationship of a jivatma or soul to the Krishna or super soul, right? So, and one who acts according to constitutional position of the soul. So one has to understand that we are the soul, and we have to also understand what is our relationship with Krishna. And once we know what is our real position, that is the actually eternal servant of Krishna, and when we act accordingly, so Srila Prabhupada said that person is a dhira person. So that is one definition. The second one, actually, as we studied in the text number 1, in the same book, actually, we're currently studying, Updeshamrut. So the first text where it says, Vacho vegam, manasah krodha vegam, jiva vegam, udarupastha vegam, etana vegana, yo vishyeta dhiraha, sarvam api mama prithvim sashishat. So the third line, etana vegana yo vishyeta dhiraha. So, and even the translation said, the sober person who can tolerate the urge to speak, mind's demands, the actions of anger, and the urges of the tongue, belly, and genital is qualified to make disciples all over the world. So these actually 6 symptoms are of a sober person. A person who is a dhir, patient, Only a dhir person can tolerate the urges of these 6 things. That is actually what we studied in the first text, right? So actually the urge to speak, and we discussed that in a second, actually text number 2 as well in a detail. one has to actually control the speech, what we speak, or it can very easily become a prajalp, right? So if one is actually habituated to talk all the time, then they can become a talkative, right? And that will turn into they talk about others, then they criticize others, and that's how the enmity can actually arise in the heart, or enviousness can actually, can get into your heart as well. So Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur has said that if you want to actually talk or speak, you talk about Krishna, otherwise you keep your mouth, shut. Because talking unnecessarily is not actually a quality of a sober person. So there are different instructions as we actually discussed when we discussed the text number 2, Atyahara, right? That there could be different prescription for householders, grahasthas. They can actually have a little bit, they can actually talk with other people as a matter of duty. If they're actually doing different kind of professions or jobs, right? You have to talk to other people, and you only talk to the level what is required. But for the sannyasi, he should completely give up the association of the non-devotees or actually useless talk, he should not do that. So that is urge to speak. Also the urge of mind, actually we have to actually engage the mind in the service of the Lord. Otherwise, mind actually has a full control of all the senses, and it can actually take any sense, it can focus, it can even take your intelligence away, as Lord Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita. So it's best actually, you cannot really restrict the mind or its urges, So best thing is to change its engagement from material things to the spiritual. That way, mind can be also regulated. Same thing for the anger as well, right? Anger actually normally arises from the lust, right? So as we study in Bhagavad Gita, actually, when we contemplate on the senses or contemplate on the object of the senses, we develop the attachment, and we actually want those things. And when we don't get those things, then actually we become angry. And when we become angry, our memory is bewildered. Right? We do not remember, properly what a particular person has done for us. So once our memory is bewildered, then our intelligence is also lost, and then we again fall down in the same material pool. So it's better to actually control the anger. And when we talk about tongue, belly, tongue, and genitals, so belly and tongue actually, or obviously the belly want to eat, right? So it has that urge to eat. But for devotee, it is prescribed that actually we should actually control that urge. We should only eat when we are hungry, what is required for our body's maintenance. Because if we eat, following the dictate of our tongue, who always want to actually taste various palatable preparations, right? Various dishes. So one should not be actually greedy in that regard. One should control the urge. Otherwise, overeating or atyahar can lead to various bodily diseases, and that can again interrupt our devotional services. So controlling the belly and tongue is also very, very important. Best thing is to actually, whatever we prepare, we offer it to the Lord, and then we actually honor the prasadam. So when we honor the prasadam, actually prasadam purifies us, purifies our actually body, it purifies our mind as well. So this greed or urges are automatically checked or controlled by actually honoring the prasad. So for some advanced devotees, they only accept prasad, they do not eat anything else. Whatever they eat is actually offered to the Lord. So that is the best way forward for advanced devotees. But for us, actually, if we cannot actually, get to the stage very quickly, then even we are eating outside, when we don't have any other option, then we better control our urges, try to actually keep it to minimum, what is required. So that way we can actually control all these urges. And the same with the genitals, when we talk about actually, we're not actually, the illicit sex is prohibited. So if you want to actually have a sex, then Srila Prabhupada says you get married, right? You regulate your life, you accept the course of the marriage. According to the scripture, then you can actually raise the Krishna conscious children as well. So there is no harm. So that way, actually, one who controls the 6 urges, following the prescriptions, what is actually mentioned in the scriptures, that person can become a dhir. And also there is a third definition where actually it's not a definition, there is a reference in Bhagavad Gita chapter 2. I think, let me refer to that. It's a dehinosmin yata dehe kaumaram yavanam jara tata dehantar praptir dhiras tatranam huyati. So dhiras tatranam huyati. So the embodied soul, actually it passes from actually various from the boyhood to youth to the old age, right? So there is always change in the body, and at the death he is actually again transferred into the next body. So this transmigration, dehantar, so the person who is there is not bewildered by this change because he understands. And in the same purpose, Srila Prabhupada actually points out any man who has a perfect knowledge of the constitution of an individual soul, the super soul, and the nature, both material and spiritual, is also called a dhir, or a most sober person. Such a man is never deluded by the change of bodies. So a similar definition, right? So one who understands that he is a soul, and one who understands his relationship with the Lord Krishna, right? That is his constitutional position, and one who acts accordingly. So one who acts as eternal servitor of the Lord. So one who acts accordingly, naturally his senses are purified because he's always engaged in serving the Lord, right? So his senses are purified. So there is no chance for him to actually, that his senses can get carried away by material things. So his senses is actually, the senses are automatically controlled by being engaged in the service of the Lord, right? So that person can be also called dhir. And the text number 1, actually, as we discussed, so there is a process given how to actually control their urges, right? So even they sound very different, they actually, the base meaning is the same, that one who can control their senses, right? And one who rightly engage all the senses in the service of the Lord is called a dhira person. And such person is also not bewildered by actually various changes in the body, or even a dehantar, that is actually transmigration of a soul from one body to another. So, so we discuss, what is actually meant by dhir, and there are various references. Actually, you will come to know, as we study various scriptures in Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhāgavatam. But I think this is good enough for us for our discussion here. What is actually meant by a patient person? So even actually, as we are learning, so we are actually all new in this line, and we are actually try to study Bhagavad Gita, and we try to understand actually the instruction given by our spiritual masters. So we have to be very, very patient, because it is not going to be very easy task sometimes for some people, because we're always habituated, by our actually previous habits. So sometimes we fall down, then we have to again actually stand up, and again we carry on our devotional services. So we have to actually exercise the patience. We should not actually accept the defeat very easily. So we should have a firm determination, and we should not have any doubts in this process. So last actually week I shared that actually verse where Lord Krishna says that actually one who has a doubt in his mind, So what that means, that one who has a doubt can never have a firm faith, and without firm faith, how can actually going to deliver a proper devotional service to Lord Krishna? So initially, yes, you can ask various questions. We can verify that actually the person actually you are receiving knowledge from is a bona fide. The source of the knowledge is bona fide. But once all that is verified, then you should have a firm faith in their instruction of your spiritual master, and you should also have a firm faith in the scripture as well. You should not doubt it. Otherwise, it is not going to be very helpful, because the bhakti start with Shraddha, right? Shraddha. And the Shraddha has to actually somehow translate into Nishtha, which is a firm faith. But that can only happen when you're doubtless, right? Because doubtful person, everything is very unauspicious, because he's always doubting. And it's very hard to progress. So these two things, being patient and being confident. And the last thing I want to discuss, where Srila Prabhupada actually mentions here, Avasya Rakshibe Krishna. Krishna will surely protect me and give me help for the successful execution of devotional service. So this is called confidence, right? So this point is very, very important. So what that mean here, that actually we should have a full confidence into Supreme Personality of Godhead, that he will always protect us, right? So we have to be totally dependent on Krishna for everything. Because person who think that actually they are the doers, or actually who do not have firm faith in Krishna, they always actually doubt, and they're always disturbed as well, because especially when people are actually put into difficult condition for neophyte devotees, So the first thing that happens when they are in difficult condition, it is just a generalized actually opinion. It may not be applicable to everyone, but normally when we are going to the difficult condition, normally we sacrifice the devotional service very easily, So you actually get into the fight or flight mode, right? So you want to actually either you focus on fighting the situation, or you run away from the situation. So whatever the situation is, I think one should remain actually patient, and one should see the hand of Krishna, So you must have heard from Vishnu, So this instruction is very, very important, how to see hands of Krishna in everything that happens around us. Initially, it's very hard, because when bad things doesn't actually fall, or as we wish, or everything seem actually not going actually in the right direction, then we obviously get actually dissatisfied, and we get frustrated, and then actually our faith in Krishna is actually tested at these trying times, right? So that is actually examination kind of, that can you remain stable, can you still focus on your devotional service? So we should have a firm confidence that actually Krishna somehow will actually protect us, because the picture that we see is very narrow-minded, and the picture that Krishna sees is very, it's a broad picture. He sees things in a big picture, what they call it, bird eye view, right? So he may be actually planning things for all the living entities, what is good for this, particular Jivatma. We may not think that is good for us at a present moment, So there is a nice story. I'm not sure you have heard that Amrish Prabhu actually told us long time ago. It's a Genghis Khan story. Have you heard that? Intermediate class? So this is actually great king, you heard the Genghis Khan, So I do not remember actually vividly, but I will try to actually just narrate it quickly. That this Genghis Khan was very, well-known emperor, who conquered many nations and all that. But he has I think it's one pet bird. I think it was a parrot, actually, which used to be with him all the time, and he used to love that parrot. And every time he goes, I think once he went into the forest for the hunting or something, and he was running around whole day, without water and food. And finally, he got very, very thirsty, because he was lost in the woods or something like that. And he was looking for the water to drink. And this bird was with him all the time, actually, he finally found actually a small mountain, and actually water was actually dripping down from the top of the mountain. And because he was very, very thirsty, obviously he wanted to actually drink the water. And when he actually tried to go closer and try to drink that water, the bird actually kept disturbing him and actually tried to pick on him, actually tried to push him away. Actually, he's just trying to actually stop him from drinking that water. And that happened many times. And finally, he got really frustrated because he was without food, without water, very thirsty. And the bird was actually, it didn't let him drink the water. So finally, he killed him, with his sword or something like that. But later, I think what he realized, I think he didn't drink that water, but I think that water was actually poisoned when they looked from the top. I think it was poisoned by a serpent or something, and it was poisonous. So the moral of the story is that actually we do not see things, we do not know all the circumstances around a particular situation. And that's why, Krishna is called actually well-wisher for all the living entities. So we may not see actually if something goes wrong, at any time, that things might appear that they are actually not in the best interest, for us. But if you actually keep your faith in Krishna firm, then after some time you will realize whatever happened in the past is actually happened for the betterment. So for the Genghis Khan, actually his life was saved by that bird. But at that point, actually, when he was fighting, he didn't realize that point. He realized it later on, and he regretted the most. So just like that. So that is a good example. So when things actually not going well, we are in a difficult situation. We always think that actually, oh, we are actually chanting, we're doing everything, and still Krishna is actually putting me in a difficult situation, and why? So we started to question our faith. So being patient and actually having that firm confidence that actually Krishna will always help us because he's a well-wisher of all the living entities. And if you remain patient, then you will realize actually Krishna's mercy later on. And many devotees have shared their realization, their actually personal realization, and you can learn a lot from that. That actually how things, after some time when things settle, then we get the realization actually why a particular thing actually happened in a way that has happened. So these two qualities, as Rupa Goswami said, that being confident and actually being patient is very, very important if you actually want to progress on this path and actually attain that goal of pure devotional service. All right. Any questions on this one before we actually proceed? Okay, we'll continue reading now. We'll get to the next point. I'll share the screen, Mataji.
As already explained, one should not be idle, but should be very enthusiastic about executing the regulative principles. Tat karma pravartana. Neglect of the regulative principles will destroy devotional service. In this Krishna consciousness movement, there are 4 basic regulative principles: forbidding illicit sex, meat eating, gambling, and intoxication. A devotee must be very enthusiastic about following these principles. If he becomes slack in following any of them, his progress will certainly be checked. Srila Rupa Goswami therefore recommends that karma pravartanat. One must strictly follow the regulative principles of Vaidhi Bhakti. In addition to these 4 prohibitions, yama, there are positive regulative principles, niyama, such as the daily chanting of 16 rounds on Japamala beads. These regulative activities must be faithfully performed with enthusiasm. This is called tat karma pravartana, or varied engagement in devotional service.
Okay, this point of tat karma pravartana. So actually executing the regulative principles of a devotional service, right? So this is very important. Srila Prabhupada actually rightly points out that actually the 4 regulative principles are very, very important for a neophyte. And even for actually, even the Uttam Adhikari or even Madhyam Adhikari, they have to actually execute this very, very nicely and enthusiastically, because that will actually help us actually in our progress on the devotional path. So devotee must be very enthusiastic about this principle. And Srila Prabhupada says that if one becomes slack in following any of them, his progress will certainly be checked. So this is very, actually, if you think practically, this is very true, right? So any of these four things, meat eating or gambling or illicit sex or intoxication, right? So these things actually, they are very contrary to what we're actually trying to do in a devotional service. So initially, means actually when one begin on this path, it may take some time for them to actually fully compliant with these four things. So, but once you are actually started to follow all these principles, then one has to be very, very careful. One should not actually go back to their old ways, right? Otherwise, it will affect, and it will affect your enthusiasm as well. And it's very easy for people to lose a faith, because initially the faith is not firm, the Shraddha is not firm. And as I said, actually, that enthusiasm is the life of Shraddha. So one has to be very, very enthusiastic to follow these four regulative principles. And there is no other option. And this four regulative principle will also tie in very well with actually in regard to actually controlling the urges of our senses as well. So, being sober. Where Srila Prabhupada also actually here said, one must strictly follow the regulative principle of Vaidhi Bhakti. So do you know what is a Vaidhi Bhakti? This actually term came here. So I just wanted to ensure, do you understand what is Vaidhi Bhakti? Okay. So there are two actually branches of sadhana bhakti. The first one is called Vaidhi Bhakti and another one is called Raganuga Bhakti. Okay, this is just for the information. We are not going to actually discuss this in a detail, but I just want you to understand the concept. So I will read you the small paragraph by Srila Prabhupada. He spoke on this point, so you will understand this very well. Just give me a minute. So this is Srila Prabhupada, right? Okay. So Krishna is ready to accept our service in so many ways. Either if you cannot establish a deity, then you simply hear about him. That is the most important thing. We do not require to establish temple everywhere. If there is possible to establish a temple and serve Krishna properly according to the regulation mentioned in the Shastras or the instruction by the spiritual master, this is called Vaidhi Bhakti. Vaidhi Bhakti means discharging devotional service under regulative principles. So without Vaidhi Bhakti, you cannot jump to the Raga Bhakti. Rag Bhakti is spontaneous. That does not require any regulative principle. Out of love, out of feeling anyone want to serve Krishna, that is gopis. All the inhabitants of Vrindavan, they did not undergo any regulative principle, but spontaneously they are always ready to serve God, Krishna. That is called a Raga Bhakti. So the example here, just like a mother, as soon as there is a child, baby, she takes care. Although she does not go to the school, how to take care of a child, but automatically she takes care. Similarly, this automatically serving Krishna, that is called a Raga Bhakti. That is reached by Vaidhi Bhakti, by practicing. Just like formerly there was a marriage, child marriage, a small boy and a small girl. But simply by association, the girl understands how to serve the husband. And the husband also understands how to give protection to the wife. And mostly the life was very pleasing, happy. From the very beginning, she knows, here is my husband, and he knows, here is my wife. At least we have seen in our India, there is no question of separation. There is no question of divorce. The love is there from the very beginning. The propensity was there, and immediately the object of the love is there. The girl has got husband and husband has got a wife. So the love continues spontaneously. So the Srila Prabhupada has very nicely explained the two things here, Raga Bhakti and Vaidhi Bhakti. So Vaidhi Bhakti is actually execution of a devotional service according to the scriptural rules and regulations, right? And that is actually under the expert guidance of a spiritual master. So we have to actually then what we're trying to do now, then we actually try to follow the Vaidhi Bhakti. So in initial stages, you cannot just jump straight to the Raga Bhakti, right? You have to go through the purification process of a Vaidhi Bhakti. So this is very structured Vaidhi Bhakti, you have to follow all the actually regulatory principle, all the rules and regulations, and you have to actually implement all the instruction given by your expert spiritual master. So that is a Vaidhi Bhakti. And Ragnuka Bhakti actually, that's very advanced stage, that's actually when one actually reaches to the that actually bhava stage, that is called spontaneous love. So that is still actually very new to me. It's just information, but just to understand the concept, what is actually Vaidhi Bhakti and Rag Bhakti. Actually, I just referred to this Srila Prabhupada's lecture. So, okay. So Srila Prabhupada also points out that actually there are two things. First is actually prohibitions, that is called yama, and there's a prescription, that is a niyama, right? So prohibitions, you already know the four actually regulatory principles, and actually niyams. So one is actually chanting 16 rounds. That is one of the examples. So there are many instructions when you do the deity worship and all that. So you have to follow all those instructions nicely. And obviously, the actually studying the scripture, Srimad Bhagavatam, Srimad Bhagavad Gita, under the guidance of spiritual master, and implementing those instructions in your daily life. So that is all come under actually this same umbrella of actually Vaidhi Bhakti. Okay, do you have any question? And this is what is called actually Tat Tat Karma Pravartanat. So varied engagement in a devotional service. All right, can we progress to the next? I think what is time? I think we can finish one more paragraph, I would say. Okay, still. Okay.
Furthermore, in order to be successful in devotional service, one must give up the association of undesirable people. This includes karmis, jnanis, yogis, and other non-devotees. Once Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was asked by one of his householder devotees about the general principles of Vaishnavism, as well as the general routine activities of the Vaishnava. And Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu immediately replied, Asat Sanga Tyaga, a Vaishnava Achar. Characteristically, a Vaishnava is one who gives up the association of worldly people or non-devotees. Srila Narottam Das Thakur has therefore recommended Tandir Charan Sevi Bhakta Sanevas. One has to live in the company of pure devotees and execute the regulative principles laid down by the previous acharyas. The six Goswamis, namely Srila Rup Goswami, Sri Sanatan Goswami, Sri Jeev Goswami, Sri Raghunath Das Goswami, Sri Gopal Bhatta Goswami, and Sri Raghunath Bhatta Goswami. If one lives in the association of devotees, there is little chance of associating with non-devotees. The International Society for Krishna Consciousness is opening many centers just to invite people to live in the company of devotees and practice the regulative principles of spiritual life.
Okay, thank you, Mataji. So here, the next point is actually Sangatyag, right? So giving up the association of undesirable people. So we discussed similar point in text number 2 as well, that actually where we refer to the Janasangha, right? So in the previous take, actually we focus on the point of actually when we associated with the worldly minded person, how that can be detrimental to our actually devotional service, how that can actually carry away from our actually prescribed path. So here, the prescription here is actually giving up the association of undesirable people. So that is a Sangatyag. So this is also very important. And Srila Prabhupada says that we should give up the association of undesirable people. And the example given or include here is karmis, jnanis, yogis, and other non-devotees. So when we say karmis, then we see, actually there are a lot of karmis, and even we are karmis in one way, because we are actually want to do activities, and we always desire a result for every action we perform, right? And we want to enjoy the result of our action, right? And that is what karmi people do. So basically, karmi people are very selfish, So even they do various karma kind activities, various, whatever austerities they perform, but they actually do it with the result in their mind. So they are not really interested in actually obtaining the causeless mercy of Lord Krishna, right? Their aim is to actually get some material profit out of it. So by associating with such people is not very congenial, because we will be affected by that. So we should not associate with the karmis, right? So we keep our actually association very limited to the required level. When we talk about jnanis, right, what is wrong with the jnanis? Do you know the concept of now jnanis clarified to you? Why the association of jnanis is not actually helpful? Anyone? Okay. So jnanis actually, they are a philosophy, very speculative, right? They try to understand Krishna by this speculating, different things. They want to understand Krishna on the dint of their knowledge or experimental, information or knowledge, whatever they call it. And they believe that actually that Krishna is very powerful because he has all the jnana, and they believe if they actually perfect this jnana, then they can actually able to merge, into Krishna's body, or actually the Brahma Jyoti. So they do not want to actually take the position of a subordinate or eternal servitor. They think they are as good as Krishna, and that's why some of the Mayavadi followers, they call themselves Narayan, right? So you are Narayan, myself Narayan, all that nonsense. So actually, the association of Mayavadis or actually jnanis is not good at all. I think even Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said that actually it's a spiritual suicide to become a Mayavadi. So one should be actually very carefully actually give up the association of any jnanis or philosophical speculators. Even Krishna, actually, in a Srimad Bhagavatam, there is a famous verse. Savai pumsa paro dharmo yathor bhakti radokshajay ahai tuki apratihata yayatma su prasiddhati. So savai pumsa paro dharmo yathor bhakti adokshajay. So Krishna is referred there as Adhokshaj. So he's one of the name of Krishna. And actually the literal meaning of Adhokshaj is one who pushed down all the effort of philosophical speculators. So he's pushing it down. So that's why Srila Prabhupada says that even actually these jnanis or the speculators, they can actually speculate for even millions of years. They cannot even come close to understanding a Krishna by their experimental knowledge. So even Krishna actually do not accept. So actually he says that no one can able to understand him by this actually speculation. So we should actually give up the association of all the actually speculators, right? It's not going to help us in our devotional service. And even the yogis here, Srila Prabhupada mentioned. So some of the yogis actually, they opt for various siddhis, like we discussed that 8 different siddhis. So they are also very material, because actually the desires, to become smaller than the smallest or bigger than biggest, to have actually very whimsical opulence and all that, that is still material, right? So that is again is not actually helpful. So we should give up the association of all the yogis as well, and even all the non-devotees, because if we get into their association, so with the association, there are 2 things happen. Actually, one is actually when we associate with them, we get influence, and we also get attached to what they do as well. So that is again going to distract us from our path. So that is not very congenial. So it's 4:55 now. I think we have begun this point, but we'll continue with this from the next week. So if you have any burning questions, obviously you can actually ask now. Otherwise, you can also post the question in our intermediate group on a WhatsApp. Anyone have any questions on what we discussed so far? intermediate class, please. Yeah. No. Soumya Mataji? All good, okay. All right, then we can actually conclude this, our today's actually discussion. And please actually take time to actually read through the purport. And most importantly, also you should recite all the actually verses starting from text 1 to actually text 3. Because when we actually studied, when Amrish Prabhu taught us, actually, we know these verses by heart, as we actually progress one by one. So when you will have the examination, I think you should remember all the translation as well. And that will definitely going to actually help you. Okay. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Thank you, Amrish Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Shital, thank you very much for your nice class for the intermediate group. We will just be taking a 2 to 3 minute break while we prepare for the next section of the program. So I just request everyone to please wait for 2 or 3 minutes. We will disconnect from YouTube and then reconnect again. So for the YouTube audience as well, we'll be back shortly. Hare Krishna.